Hey, what's up? I'm Mooch, former one percenter, and you're chatting with Staxx.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Mooch.
But I do think it was proven that even in that racketeering case and stuff, that guys that were selling drugs, they weren't paying percentage up. It wasn't going to the chapter or to the national, and it is not and was not ever a criminal organization.
And what was your thoughts when they were trying to take the patch away?
And it was crazy. I mean, it was so surreal that you'd think that they could even happen. And a lot of people don't know, but that when it first happened, when they physically did take everyone's patch, they were able to pull people over and take their patch from them. They were breaking into cars, breaking into houses, taking club property. If a motorcycle had Mongols painted on it, they were taking motorcycles. Like, it was absolutely ludicrous. And I don't think a lot of people knew that at the time. And the judge had come out and said that she was misled and didn't realize that the government was trying to overreach like that, and put an injunction on that so that they weren't allowed to take our patches, but we weren't allowed to wear them at the time. And then, pretty quickly we were able to get them back while it was all going through court. And that case lasted, 11 years before it finally.
They pulled you over and took your patch too?
Initially, yeah, within that first year. So that first year that happened, all the Mongols had a T-shirt that just said MFFM and Black and White Nation on the back, but there was no patches. It's like a picture of a national run where we're probably down to 200 members and everyone was just wearing T-shirts because we didn't have patches.
That's wild, man. Isn't it? There's rules about your patch, right? Your patch is sacred to you. You can't.
Yeah. Every club's different as far as what the rules are, but definitely it's the most important thing there is, in the club.
Yeah. So now, when people go to these motorcycle rallies and there's two clubs that go, and sometimes altercations break out, what do you think the solution is to that problem?
Well, honestly, I think that, if say you're a club that has beef with another club and it's a rival area, I just think you should just stay away from it. You know what I mean? What's the point in going there and having this pissing contest or stepping on each other's toes? But I also believe that no matter who shows up, when you're in public around all these people, it's a bad look for everybody when shit kicks off, And I'm not saying that anyone that did it before was in the wrong. I'm also not saying it's right, but I'm saying if you think bigger picture, all these national runs, these big motorcycle rallies, now all of a sudden the one percenters are the bad guys. They're unwelcomed. People are scared of them. You're not, no one wants you there. And who wants to show up to a place where you're unwanted? Everyone's, the cops are following you around half the time, like Daytona and all these places are no patches allowed now. So it creates so much disadvantage for the clubs, or it's such a black eye to club life that, in a perfect world, they would ignore each other. And if there was still beef, they can handle it privately. But I also know how ego gets. And, one guy looks at another guy for too long and things happen, right? But in a perfect world, I'd wish everyone could at least coexist in public.
So you ended up getting a tattoo of the Mongols, pretty big tattoo on the back of your head, right?
Yeah. I would have been in maybe 2 months when I got that tattoo.
2 months?
Yeah. The Mongols have rules now that are a little bit different, but at the time there wasn't a rule against getting a club tattoo right away. And I figured, hey, I'm all in. I was at the time I joined too, I was one of the few white guys in the club. The club's pretty mixed now, but at the time he was very California centric and it was a lot of Hispanics. And, Oklahoma obviously had white guys in it. A couple other, Colorado had some, but we were, Oregon was one of the first like bigger group of white guys initially. And so, I was trying to find my mark and find my place in the club. And I thought that was a good idea. And what had happened was that, I got that from my brother when I was in Nevada. I was traveling back and forth to Nevada a lot. And when that newspaper article I was talking about came out, they had taken some pictures of us riding around and they took that famous picture of the back of my head. But because it was used by the media, it's what they call media stock, which means anybody could use it and not have to pay for it. And so then it started being used everywhere for everything. When Mongols started in Canada, the picture was there. When Mongols started in Australia, that's the picture they used. Like it made its rounds for several years.
Yeah. So your tattoo is now it's part of the legacy, right?
Yeah. I ended up, when I left the club, I ended up covering it up. I didn't want to represent something that I was no longer a part of, and I didn't want to be people to think I was a part of something I wasn't a part of. So that was kind of an end of an era for me. I mean, I was like closing the final chapter of when I left, was covering that tattoo up.
Is there anything you regret from when you were part of the 1% club?
Man, I don't think so. I don't really believe in regrets. I learned a lot from. I made a lot of mistakes. Don't get me wrong, but I've learned a lot from them, and I think a lot of that has shaped me for the man I am today. I had a great time in the 1% world. I had a blast. I had all these stories from being on the road, riding motorcycles with some of my very best friends. So it's hard to regret any of that. I'm happy to have moved on. I'm very happy with where my life is now. I regret some relationships. I regret some of the political relationships that got changed over because of club politics and people that I was friends with in other clubs. I regret some relationships I had within the club that, because I was following rules and people got put out bad, I didn't stay in touch with. So, some things like that. But overall, no, I don't really have any major regret.
So I don't know if you were in the club or out of the club at the time, but there was a guy who got killed. He got murdered, right? He got stabbed in somewhere in the Midwest.
Oh, the Mongol that got shot in Lake of the Ozarks?
What, the Lake of the Ozarks? That was your good friend, right?
Yeah, I'm the one that brought him into the club. I was still active at the time, too.
So do you know what happened with that situation?
Yeah, it was just the Mongols had started in that area. It was a lot like Oregon. It started in that area, and a lot of the local clubs said they didn't want them there. And a club called the Galloping Goose said that there would never be Mongols there. And, we made it a point to show them that we would be there. And at one point, I brought over 200 something Mongols to a motorcycle rally in Lake of the Ozarks to show, hey, we're here. But same type of thing, public event, daytime. It was a biker event, and they had instigated a fight. And this brother said, you know what, we'll take care of this later, and was leaving. And they ended up shooting and killing him. So
he's a young kid, too.
Yeah.
So what happened for you to be like, I'm walking away from this? And what was it like to walk away from the club?
Man, it was a challenge, right? I was almost, I was coming up on my 15th year as in membership. Starting to get pretty burnt out on politics. Little Dave had, all this stuff was going on with Little Dave, and he'd gotten thrown out. People were labeling him a rat. So there was this big power struggle and power vacuum, and people weren't trusting each other, not like in a violence way, but just, who's trying to run against who. And people that had influence were taking away, some of the power and influence of other people. And, I'd spent a really long time doing what I felt was best for the club. And I'd created a national support club, a lot of different bylaws and rules that, that I'd helped create, a couple different programs that I'd helped run. And it got to the point where, enough people were asking me to run for national president that I don't know if anyone took it that serious or not, but I would say that the current leadership, or the guys that were in leadership at the time, started taking away some of my position of authority, and started changing some of the stuff that I'd built. And if it was for the best, I wouldn't have had a problem with it, but it was hard to stomach. So I was starting to get pretty burnt out. At the same time, Scoops, the brother from Lake of the Ozarks, had just got killed. So that was weighing really heavy on my mind, because, it was a guy I brought into the club against my better judgment for that very reason. We were having a lot of issues with other clubs in the Midwest, and I was really burnt out. And I started feeling like I just didn't have the same beliefs and values I had early on, or I think even differently, as the club's core values changed. And I found myself being that old guy that was like, oh, it used to be like this, it used to be like this. And a lot of the new guys didn't want that anymore. And so the program I ran, or the position I felt was best for the club, I don't think others shared that same vision anymore. And so what would be the point? That would be selfish of me to try and pull everyone back to something I wanted when no one else wanted it. So I just thought the best bet was to, move on.
So what was it like the day that you laid your patch down? And can you walk me through that?
Well, initially I retired. So if you're a Mongol for more than 10 years, you're allowed to leave in good standings, keep your patch, keep your club property. So
are you at a club? Are you at a meeting when you do this?
No, I went to an all presidents meeting. And then I went to a national run in Miami. And when I came home, that's when I was starting to I'd read the room. The vibes were good. I was starting to think I might even get kicked out. And so I wanted to kind of do it on my terms. And so I called the national chapter and let them know, asked permission to retire, let them know I was retiring. I was allowed to retire in good standings. Everything was good. And then some things happened later that changed my status to out bad, but you can read about that part in my book. I'm going to leave that one hanging.
Yeah, go check out his book. I'll leave a link in the description of this video. And you gave me a lot of information, man. Now, there's probably someone watching right now who's maybe a part of a club or wants to be a part of a club. What's your advice you would have to that person?
Hang around as long as you can, for no matter what club it is, what you see is what you get for the most part. So really read it. How do they treat each other? How do they treat each other's families? How they treat each other's old ladies? What's that lifestyle really look like? And really, really consider, outside of all the excitement, really consider, is this the lifestyle for me? Because it is for a lot of people. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but you really got to make sure it's the right fit. Too many people jump in without knowing what they're getting involved in, and they end up being out in bad standings, or like the brother Scoops, you could get killed. There's so much that goes into it with a very, very, heavy consequences if it doesn't go right. So spend as much time as you can, and make sure it's the right fit for you. Make sure you find the right group of guys. Your chapter should be your best friends. Those should be guys that you'd be hanging out with or without a patch. And if you can find that, it's probably going to be a great fit, but just don't force the fit.
Now, you want to tell people where they could get your book, and what do you got going on for the future?
Yeah, so my book, it's called The Ride of My Life. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere that any Kindle store. I don't have the audiobook yet, but everything else is available. I do have a YouTube channel called Mondays with Mooch. I have not been very active on it lately, but it's where I go in there and just kind of share some of my stories and talk about my past a bit. And then, right now I'm going to start working on the audiobook pretty soon. I've been jumping on some shows like this. I got some other shows coming up, and really just trying to promote the book, trying to get the book out there as much as I can, and, get my story out there and see, keep a positive spin on it and see how I can help others.
Are you going to narrate the audio?
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be good, man. I think you put some emotions behind it. It'll be
Absolutely.
a great listen,
Yeah, no, I'm excited to do it. The publisher had already agreed to do it. We just got to kind of get the logistics of it down and get started on it.
I wish you nothing but success in the future. Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. And I'll leave a link in the description of this video if you want to check out his book. And I look forward to seeing more of you in the future.
All right, man. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks, man. If you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. And if you don't like this show, too fucking bad, start your own podcast. Peace.